This is Moments of the Movement, Civil Rights and Change in America.
I'm Lonnie Bunch, founding director of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. Welcome to Moments of the Movement.
The bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham was a turning point in the civil rights movement. But for Freeman Hrabowski, now president of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, it was personal. The Birmingham native was part of the movement as a child and knew Cynthia Wesley, one of the 4 girls killed that morning. Here, he explains how the events of that day and the aftermath not only forever changed him, but Birmingham as well, and eventually the country.
When we were in church in September and things had begun to have signs of hope, of opening up in Birmingham, remember all of the richness of my community, richness in terms of love and spirituality and hard work and mutual support. But you go downtown, I would go downtown, and I never saw one black in a position of power in downtown Birmingham, not even behind a cash register, let alone a policeman or a fireman. Nobody, everybody in any level of power was white. And to have the city fathers deciding to compromise with Dr. King and the group was a major victory. And we said things are changing. And we're in church that Sunday in September. And all of a sudden, the pastor gets a note.
At the pulpit.
At the pulpit. He stops preaching and tells us that that other church, our sister church, where relatives and of sons and daughters and fathers and mothers had been bombed, and didn't know how bad it was. It was just a shock. And he said, please don't rush out. But it was the first time we'd ever seen church stopped in the middle. It had to be bad. People started driving in that direction. Mother and father took us home because we didn't know whether that meant the next church was going to be bombed or whatever. And as it turns out, I thought back to different friends, one of whom was Cynthia. And I'd seen her on Friday, and I've said this before. I remember her so well. She was always very kind to me because I was younger than other classmates. She was always very nice to me. So if I was 12, she was 14. And she said, bye, Freeman. Oh, God. We said bye. And it seems to me it was she who said, see you Monday. See you Monday. Yeah. And I knew she went to that church. I mentioned, so all these names, and she was one of them, but I saw her face there at the school. And when one of the girls had been given a ring that morning by her father, and they were not able to find her, and then found that hand. And everybody knew that hand with that ring. We had nightmares for years. It was like war. It was just awful. My parents said to me when I asked if I could go to the funeral that I could. And I'll never forget, I was to leave school. My parents had given me a notice, and my principal saw me, and this is education at its best. He came up to me and he said, you're representing us today. And he looked at my tie, and it was not dark enough at that time. You really were supposed to wear dark ties to funerals. And he took his tie off and took my tie off. He tied his tie on me. It was amazing, the small things people can do to make a child feel special. And I'll never forget the 3 coffins with the nieces the youngest of the three. I think she was 11, McNair, in the middle, smaller. I'd never seen a coffin that small. It was awful. It was just awful. And Dr. King said, he said, life, what you need to know is that people who were the naysayers were saying that church was bombed, those girls were in those coffins because we went to jail. We upset things. And that's what happens. And they tried to tell us how mean-spirited, how awful people can be. These were blacks saying that. And here's Dr. King back, taking responsibility. And he looked into the faces of those parents and said, life is as hard as steel. As hard as steel. In other words, I don't know what to say. It's just so hard for all of us. I just remember that. I really do. And I'll tell you what gave me hope in the midst of the darkness. It was the first time I'd seen whites in my church. There were rabbis and priests and Baptist ministers from It was amazing. And they cried.
Oral histories were conducted by the Southern Oral History Program and the Center for the Study of the American South at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill on behalf of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture and the Library of Congress. Moments of the Movement, Civil Rights, and Change in America comes to you from New Visions, New Voices, expanding the American conversation because it's time to hear the difference. With support from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Visit us online at newvisionsnewvoices.org.